Chapter 21. The Croft Keeper. The Third Hell. Sincroft.
"Stand back!" Crinan shouted to the others. "I got this!"
He raised his revolver and fired a shot, striking the Croft Keeper directly in the forehead. A blue light flashed and the bullet ricocheted to the right. Crinan cursed. The creature had shields just like his own.
"Nice shot!"
Malinka called forward as she ran to the right.
"So glad you're the one with guns."
"I hit him right in the head,"
Crinan yelled back. He watched as the centaur squared up his shoulders to charge.
"He's got magic shield things."
"So do you,"
Malinka replied.
"Get up there and fight him."
Crinan grumbled and the Croft Keeper charged forward. The clomping of his hooves against the cobblestone streets filled Crinan's ears, and he fired another shot just before running out of the way of the Croft Keeper's path. The centaur ran past, and Crinan turned to face him.
"You have to lower his shields,"
Anders shouted at them.
"Land your shots! If I were able, I would assist you with my abilities, but I fear I am swordless and powerless here."
"Just keep Dolly safe,"
Malinka yelled.
"You two hang back."
Crinan ran toward the Croft Keeper, firing his pistol as he went. Most of his shots landed, and Crinan watched as every single bullet was stopped by the rippling blue light. The Croft Keeper turned toward him, swinging his poleaxe. The head of the weapon slammed against Crinan's own shields, sending him flying backward and into a rotted-looking market stall. The structure collapsed, and Crinan was momentarily buried in debris.
"Brothers, damn it all!"
Crinan scowled as he pushed his way through the debris.
"This is bullshit. How much shields do I have left?" "Shields, 185 of 220.
The shield buff Sage had given Crinan had run out, and he was back in normal territory. He knew he had to be careful. Quickly, he dug himself out of the debris and got to his feet. Crinan saw the Croft Keeper standing and waiting for him. When he was finally standing again, the centaur leveled his poleaxe like a lance and charged. Bullets flew from Crinan's revolver and bounced off the Croft Keeper's shields. Crinan squeezed the trigger one final time, and the hammer slammed against nothing. He was out of ammo. He had to reload. Cursing, he ran out of the way of danger and opened the cylinder of his gun.
"Hurry up,"
Crinan whispered to himself as he looked back and forth between his ammo belt and the Croft Keeper. He managed to get 4 bullets in before the centaur was looking at him.
"Brothers, damn it all!"
Crinan cursed as he slammed the cylinder back into place. He raised his gun and began firing again. The creature's shields once again deflected all of Crinan's attacks, and Crinan was beginning to grow frustrated. He had no idea how much damage he was dealing to the centaur's shields, or how much shields the centaur even had. He jumped out of the way of another charge and once again began reloading. Crinan heard the sound of footsteps charging rapidly, slapping against the cobblestone as if someone was charging his direction. He turned his head just in time to see Malinka leap through the air, axes raised above her head, and land on the back of the centaur, bringing her weapons down against its spine. The blue light flickered again, and the Croft Keeper started bucking as she slammed her axes against its body over and over.
"Get your fucking guns loaded!"
Malinka screamed. She managed to scoot forward and lock her legs around the centaur's upper torso as she continued to strike it. The beast jumped and kicked and lashed out at her with her hands until finally Crinan heard what sounded like glass shattering. A moment later, the head of one of Malinka's axes was buried in the Croft Keeper's upper back. The creature howled in pain and was finally able to grab hold of Malinka's arm. He ripped her from his body and tossed her aside like a doll. Crinan watched as Malinka hit the ground hard and rolled to a stop only a few feet away from him. Her face was bloodied from a wound she had sustained on her head, but she was able to get to her feet. The centaur turned toward him, kicked its front feet, and began to charge. Malinka snarled and let out a growl as she raised her remaining axe, took aim, and hurled it forward. The axe soared through the air and found its mark in the Croft Keeper's left pectoral muscle. The centaur roared with pain as it charged. His target was Malinka, and Crinan looked back and forth between the two of them. He didn't have time to fuck off. He charged forward, ramming his shoulder into Malinka and knocked her out of the way just in time for the beast to collide with his body. Krynen was knocked underfoot and trampled by the hooves of the creature. He felt his ribs break and gasped in pain, but it was over quick. Grunting in distress, but still holding his revolvers in hand, Krynen flipped onto his back and raised his weapons. The Croft Keeper was turning toward him for another pass. Krynen had only one chance to make this work. He raised his weapons in front of him and without another thought emptied both the cylinders. 12 bullets perforated the centaur's chest, and Krynen watched as the creature howled in pain and staggered backward. Krynen knew his own shields were gone and most of his HP as well. He watched and wheezed as the centaur stared at him for a moment, let out a labored breath, and then collapsed onto the ground.
Croft Keeper killed, plus 100,000 rank. New rank, 29,150,777,289.
Quickly now, Anders shouted as he and Dolly ran to Krynen's side. Each of them grabbed one of Krynen's arms and pulled him to his feet.
Remember, he has to get through the portal last, Anders shouted. If he goes in before any of us, it will close.
Fuck, Krynen groaned as they dragged him forward. The swirling blue portal opened up just behind the dead Croft Keeper.
Go!
Krynen watched as Malinka retrieved her axes from the dead centaur. She briefly looked over at him with an expression he hadn't seen her make in their whole time together in the Hells. She looked worried for him. Krynen saw her eyes. He saw the way she gently nibbled on her lower lip, how her nostrils flared.
Go!
Krynen urged her.
Hurry!
Malinka nodded slightly, turned, and ran through the portal just as Ander and Dolly let go of him.
Be right behind you,
Krynen choked as he grabbed his ribs and stood on his own.
Get through already!
Ander cracked a proud-looking smile as he looked at Krynen and slowly nodded his head. The wind from the portal gently blew through both of their hair, and Ander took hold of Dolly's wrist and pulled her forward. Krynen watched them both disappear, turned and took one last look at Croft and the Croft Keeper, and then stepped forward himself.